Welcome to another edition of Policing with Pride. I'm Michael Severe. We're joined by the two newest SROs from Papillion Police. Nick Gross joining us along with Frank Mattia. Thanks for joining us, guys. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
What do you say your main duty is as an SRO? It seems like there's a lot involved in being a school resource officer in a high school or a middle school.
You want that one or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Facilitating a safe learning environment for both staff and students. We're there to keep the kids safe, to keep the staff safe, to make sure that their only concern is learning.
For the most part, the kids obviously in high school are a little bit older, and so there's a lot of education piece with the kids. A lot of kids come up to me asking hypothetical questions or what-if questions, and so it's instructing them, guiding them, redirecting them to the appropriate people, and then being there to support the administration of the school as well. So there's a lot of pieces to it.
You guys obviously are trained to be police officers. You went through a lot of that, and you have experience being a police officer. What is the training that's different for being an SRO? Is there specific stuff?
Touching on what Nick was saying is we're there as a education, as a resource. So we're a resource. So as far as we have to educate the students, the teachers, parents, a little bit more than we would do on the road capacity when we're working patrol or investigations. There's that more of that educational piece, and we have special training for that. We do SRO training,
right.
NASRO training. That's the biggest difference. As far as the job, still make arrests, do drug investigations. If anything, it's a little bit more hands-on. As a road officer, I would pass off cases to investigations if they were going to take too long because I have other responsibilities. We're basically officers of a town of how many students, Nick?
I have 1,800.
1,800. I'm a town of 500. Officer Patterson's a town of 1,000, and Officer Mahan's a town of 1,900. So,
in terms of being that kind of end-all, be-all, a lot of decisions, I'm sure, have to be made by you every day. How much of that is working with the principal and other administrators of the school as well in terms of that kind of stuff?
It's every day and it's constant. Every situation that comes up, we obviously being new to the school, we're still developing that relationship. We're still developing that communication style. But I would say that's one of the most important things is learning how to communicate with one another and kind of set boundaries and expectations of what are you going to handle, what am I going to handle, what's my role in this, and what's your role in this. And so there's just constant communication back and forth.
I know you have kids. Do you have kids now?
I do, yes.
How old?
6, 4, and 2.
Okay, so younger than really school
Yes.
age. You have school age kids.
I have an 8-year-old,
An 8-year-old.
yep, and 4-year-old. Yeah.
Do you think that helps at all, being a parent working in this capacity, because you are dealing with problems, at least in your house, involving kids?
It helps you understand a little bit more of the emotional maturity of the students you're dealing with.
Right.
I'm a little bit probably different than what Nick is because his students are older. Mine are a little bit younger, closer, nearer to my son's age. So it does help you a little bit, but again, it's been a long time since I've had to deal with that many kids, and probably back that it was when I was that age myself. So
Yeah.
it's difficult. It can be difficult. Challenging is a better word for it. It's a
Right.
good new challenge. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think having kids myself, it just helps us relate to parents a little bit more. And even though my kids are younger, I'm still a parent, still have kids. I'm still concerned about their safety, their well-being, just like these parents are too.
Yeah. Interacting with parents, is that a big part of the job?
For me, absolutely. I probably deal with more parents than even kids, whether it's asking for guidance, direction, resources. A lot of parents feel maybe helpless or stuck in certain situations, and so just trying to offer the best resources, even though I don't necessarily know, I don't know everything at all.
Right.
It's directing them to the right people.
Why did you make this choice? Because you were on overnights, right?
Yes, working
for
nights.
how long?
Well, roughly 8 years.
8 years on
Yeah.
overnights,
Yeah.
and you completely flipped your
Yeah.
schedule
Yeah.
to do this. Why'd you decide to do it?
I think you come to a point in your career you want to challenge yourself in a different way. When I did the initial interview with the chief at that time, was Len Halous, I told him, I think I'd like to be an SRO. Part of my thinking in that was, I know that's a position we have a hard time filling, so if I can get that as a way of getting hired, then that's what I'm going to say. But the longer that I've been in this department working in the city, the more interactions I have with kids on the street playing in the park and everything, and you're just like, I want to be a part of that and have that opportunity to put that imprint on them of a positive look of a police officer. And I like to think of myself as a positive look that they can be like, oh, this officer's approachable, even though maybe I don't look approachable. Once they start to talk to me, they go, oh, he likes football, he's doing these things. And so I thought it was that time in my career to make that jump.
What about you, Nick?
Going on almost 4 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was with the road patrol. Similar to Frank, actually, in my initial interview, I brought up being a school resource officer, and that's something I'd be interested in. Also, kind of going back to what Frank said too, oftentimes when we work the road, we're getting called somewhere, and oftentimes we're not necessarily wanting to be there, but we're getting called there.
Yeah.
Or we're making traffic stops, or or there's law violations to some extent that we're dealing with. And so oftentimes you interact with that person, you deal with the situation, and then you move on. I feel like as a school resource officer, we obviously have the ability to start to build relationships at an early age, start to build those connections, be a positive role model for these kids, and hopefully make a more long-term impact on these kids, before they do become adults and maybe start making different choices. So it's a chance just for us to get to them earlier and connect with them.
You mentioned being a positive role model. Also, a model of a police officer who they can trust. I mean, there are obviously kids who may not trust a police officer, and you're their front face that they see every day. Do you feel a responsibility to that?
I do. Not only for myself and the image that I want to represent for myself, but also our department and our city, and just the expectation that Papillion-La Vista and our county has for law enforcement.
I know when we were talking, when you pull somebody over, when you were on road patrol, you were the front face, obviously, of the city. Do you kind of feel the same way as now a middle school SRO?
Absolutely, because you'd be amazed being in the position that we're in, the impact that a resource officer has on that student. But when I'm working road patrol and someone goes, hey, do you know Officer Elsasser? Do you know Officer Tackett? Do you know Officer Foster? They're like, yeah, I know them. How do you know? They were my SRO. These people were 40, 50, 60 years old. And that's the impact that these officers in the school had on these citizens. And it's important to build that trust, like Nick was saying, early, and you can trust us. We have a job to do, and we're going to do the job. So I'm going to be honest with you. If you're screwing up and breaking the law, then I have to step in. But it's because I have to. It's my job. But at the end of the day, I can do it respectfully, and hopefully you're able to reflect that back on me, and you'll take that as a positive down the road.
I'm assuming every day is different, but is there kind of a routine that you have built up so far? And what's your day like when you arrive, and what do you end up having to do?
So I mean, obviously our days are structured, but then also they're not structured. And one thing I've really been striving for is to not be in a routine. I want to be in different places at different times, and I want to interact with different kids at different times, and just be visible for them. It also depends on, the call volume and what we have going on in school that day. But even the night before can also impact what our day holds, depending if there was an incident. And with one of our kids the night before, sometimes that can transfer into the school as well. And so it's being aware of everything that's going on with the kids and their families, but then, translating that into our school life. But it's tough to say what routine is just in this job in general, but especially as a school resource officer.
Have you kind of developed a schedule of how you handle your day?
Well, it's basically just like Nick said, is you go along and they have a schedule, and I'm just trying to where I fit in. Like, where can I be most advantageous to the staff? How can I be that resource for the school that they need? So I have things that I do. I'm constantly checking doors, but like Nick said, is I don't want to be in a routine where someone can kind of guess where I'm going to be at any time. So if that means I walk the hallways counterclockwise or clockwise, or if I'm going to wait 5 minutes and then walk, so I try to change it up to variety. It's the spice of life still. I mean, and you got to keep yourself busy. So, I'm not there to enforce school rules, but when I'm in the hallways, the students tend to go to class. So, and that's what they're there for, is to learn. And
Right.
and if I could be a visual deterrent to them going to a bathroom and doing something they're not supposed to do, then that's what I want to do. But yeah, it's routine, but it's not routine. It's nice. It's the best way I can put it.
Right.
How much do you think about worst case scenario? Because we see it across the country almost once a year. How much do you think of that when you're going to work?
I think about it every day, all day. It's something, whether you're going through scenarios in your mind or just looking at the school as, a building and where things could happen. But it's constant.
And you train for that. Obviously, you're helping officers be ready for that kind of thing. How much does it go through your mind?
It's all day, every day. It's in my mind constantly. When I'm standing in a certain spot, students will ask, "Well, you always stand here." Like, yeah, I can see 80% of the entries and exits to my school from one spot, so I like to stand there. I don't like to, I'm not going to tell the student that's what I'm doing, because I don't want them to have that in their mind.
Right. That's not their burden.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, that's why I'm there. Exactly. It's my burden to hold. Is like, I'm here. I'm the last line, because if something happens, I've got to be there to act. So it goes through my mind all the time. Also, because I do train our active killer training. I walk around the school and I think about, well, this would be a good scenario for me to train officers.
Right.
This is a good situation here, so that I can draw some training from when I'm walking around the school. Like, these incidents happen. This is real life. This is how the students move when something happens, like when there's a fire drill or something. Like, well, this is how they react. So we're not training right, because I'm not saying that we're not training right, but maybe we're training something that there's an expectation that's not going to happen. So. Yeah, it's constantly in your mind.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember us training for a nuclear explosion, right? We hide under the desk.
You should tell people
I know
that.
I'm old. But obviously now we train for other things, like if someone was to come into school. What's the best way to handle that with, say, high school level? You just straightforward say, we're testing for, we're training for this, we're making sure you're prepared for that? Because you don't want to be, like you said, you don't want the burden to be on them, but you also have to alert them what to do if something goes wrong.
Right. I think it's a fine line between educating and scaring them. Obviously, that's not our intent to scare them. It is to educate them, and especially with the schools in our city. They're huge campuses. The amount of entrances there's just so many, and so it is educating kids on, don't hold doors open for people. It's securing doors, locking doors behind you, etc. So, and also being visual. I mean, these kids are in relationships with other kids, and they have a general idea of what's going on in their life. And so hopefully, I'm building relationships with those kids that they can feel safe and that I'm trusted, that they can come to me with this information beforehand. So a lot of it is, like I said, educating them, and we do have drills, but it's, let's be smart about this, let's think about this, but we're here to learn. Like, this is a safe learning environment for you.
What Nick said about building relationships, that seems like, because most times in these situations you hear kids knew the kid was trouble.
Yep.
If you have that good relationship, hopefully that one of those students will come to you.
And it's not just the relationship that we build with the students, it's also the relationship with the teachers. No matter how often they see us, they're not going to interact with us as much as they're going to interact with their teachers or their counselors. So having the relationship and being able to build a relationship with the staff inside the school is also, it's paramount, because most of the time the staff's coming to me and saying, hey, I think this is going on, can you look into it? Whether it be a family issue that may have went sideways, but the staff will come to me, and it says a lot to me that the staff's comfortable to come and approach me, because sometimes, we're all adults. maybe they got pulled over by a police officer and didn't treat them right, and they're upset about that. I mean, everybody holds grudges, whether they want to say they do or not. So when the staff can come up and feel like they can approach us and give us information that's important, that's important too. We can't lose that.
A lot of serious stuff to this, but fun. I mean, have you had a good time so far doing it? I know you're working, but you are in a high school environment
Right.
where kids are having a blast. There's esprit de corps with football going on and that kind of thing. Do you have a little bit of that?
I think that's really important. Obviously, that's one of the benefits of being a school resource officer is that we can build those connections. I try to be out in the halls and building relationships with these kids. Last week I played dodgeball with a class for a while. I tried to help carry a team, and then the rest of the day the kids were coming up to me and bragging to me in the halls that they got me out. And I'm like, I'm a giant target. Don't be too impressed. But
dodge, duck, dodge.
Exactly. So it's finding ways to once again build relationships, have fun, and ultimately it's a job for us, but you got to love what you do. Otherwise, it's going to show in other ways.
Yeah, you feel the same way? Because you look intimidating. I mean,
Do I not? I mean,
not as much. Still.
So that going into the job, that's one of my that's probably a drawback for me. I've been told that yes, you look intimidating so when the kids are scared. I go, and in a way, it's like, okay, I can appreciate that. But at the other hand, I try to be as nice. Approachable. Be nice. Yeah, be approachable. Yeah. Where but I love fist bump.
Yeah.
I'll give you a fist bump all day, and I love a high five. I'll never turn down a high five. So watching the kids, they have fun, and watching how their lives are basically developing and playing out in front of them, it's like a giant soap opera in the school.
It is.
That's the truth.
And I'm a piece of furniture because I just stand there and they don't care. They'll they do TikToks behind me, not with me in them, but they're doing their thing, and it's fun watching how I'm like, oh, I remember when I did that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so it's fun, and they've got high school, so they've got the football team. Well, Liberty's got a football team,
Sure.
and they got a volleyball team that's pretty good, and cross country and track, and kids are really engaged. That's the thing that to me is refreshing, is to see a lot of these students where you hear they're always on the screen. Now they like their screens, but a lot of these kids are
extracurricular
active.
activities.
Oh yeah, they love football, they love track. So it's refreshing for me to see that.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, show choir, band. There's
yeah,
they're all the
band. I love.
Right.
My office shares a wall with the band, and so I can hear them playing. So they play really good music. I really like listening and watching them play. It's fun watching them basically grow up. So
no doubt. Last thing, what do you want people to know about your job? If you're the society, the citizens of Papillion, what do you want them to know about your job, about what you do?
So for me, I guess for me it would be I care. I care about the kids. I care about that school and the staff there. It's one of those things. If I didn't care, it's not the right position to be in, and it's not the right career field to be in. So it's investing. It's caring about the kids and wanting to be a part of their lives in a positive way.
I'm here in this uniform because I want to try to make people's lives better. When I was on the road, generally, I would come into a person on their worst day, because you don't call the police unless it's a bad day. Now, being in the school, these kids are living their best life for the most part. They still have bad days.
Sure.
And I want to be able to facilitate that for them. I want them to have a good time, to feel safe, to feel like they're in an area where they can trust adults and they can trust the police. And I'm there for them, to make them feel better, feel confident in what they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish. And I want them to know that as long as I'm standing in the school, I'm there. They can come talk to me if they got a problem. If it's something that I can help them with, I'm going to. If not, I'm going to try to direct them on the right path.
I have a high school student. I have a middle school student. I appreciate what you guys do. I can't imagine how hard the job could be at times, but we want to thank you guys for taking on this job.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.